And welcome back. So former President Jacob Zuma's disciplinary hearing has been postponed for safety reasons. The ANC said in a statement that it had been advised that activities including disciplinary hearings that attract large gatherings are not advisable as they have the potential for violence. Zuma will now appear before the disciplinary committee after the elections. He was summoned by the party after he was found guilty of contravening its constitution. This is after he denounced the ANC's leadership and pledged his support for the newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe party. And to expand on this, we are now joined by political analyst Dr. Zamo Mbandlwa, as well as the Institute of Race Relations Risk Analyst and Campaigns Manager Makone Maja, who's joining us for this conversation. Dr. Mbandlwa, let's start off with you. So an advisory just came out now from the ANC that there will be a press briefing at 12 o'clock with the Secretary General of the party. We ran a poll early this morning, and the outcomes of that poll was that the ANC is indecisive. A large majority of the people that participated in the poll are saying that the ANC is indecisive. What do you read into what's happening here? Because I remember at some point the ANC had already said that they will not go ahead with the disciplinary hearing right now. Instead, they decided to suspend his membership until after the elections.
Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers. Well, I will agree with the results of the poll, especially on a number of issues. We can talk about the issue of the former president, the issue of the current president. There are so many other issues where the ANC is not decisive. But I will also add that it's not only undecisive, but the ANC leadership is also not consistent in the manner in which they take decisions. So it's very difficult even for the society, and I think even also for the membership of the ANC to predict what the ANC will do in the future, because they are actually changing almost every day. They take a decision today, they change it tomorrow, while we are still actually focusing on a decision that they've taken, and then another decision is taken. I think that's where the problem is, because particularly on the issue of the former president, there were so many different views of from the leaders of the ANC at a national level. You will hear the General Secretary saying something else, you'll hear the president saying something else, the chairperson of the ANC saying something else. So it was very difficult for the people of the country and also for the ANC membership to understand exactly what is the position of the ANC after the announcement that was made by the former president last year in December 16. So it was very difficult for people to apprehend what exactly is the position of the ANC at a national level. And when the ANC took a decision not to discipline the former president during this period in preparation for the elections, I think that was a fair decision of the ANC, because initially the ANC have indicated that they will actually investigate the matter, and then once they find credible information, then they will start the process of disciplining the president, probably after the elections. Now, all of a sudden, a decision was reversed last week, where the ANC indicated that they were planning to discipline the former president next week, Tuesday. And all of a sudden, that decision has changed. I think the issue of the security is not only an issue of the security in terms of securing the buildings and those who are sitting as a disciplinary committee members, but also there is a sense that in the society, whenever the former president is being prosecuted, he mobilizes the support. And I'm certain that even if the disciplinary hearing was going ahead on Tuesday, they were going to a lot of people rallying behind him, supporting him. And,
but that wouldn't be anything new, though, Dr. Mbandlwa, don't you think? It's nothing new. This is what the former president has always done, even when he was the deputy president of the ANC. That is what he's always done. You mobilize people to come outside the courtrooms and court buildings to protest in support of you. But I just quickly want to go to this. So this is what the ANC says, that initially they said that they will have the disciplinary hearing after the elections, but then reneged again on that and now decided that the disciplinary hearing would actually go ahead on Tuesday. Then again, it was changed again that now it will happen after the elections. But mind you, the same disciplinary committee has already dealt with Ace Magashule, the Secretary General of the ANC, for not apologizing to the president of the ANC. He was expelled. And here you have a former leader who has started his own political party, who will be on the ballot paper, and the party is incapable of taking a decisive decision.
Yeah. Certainly, I agree with you. That's why I indicated earlier on that the ANC is not decisive in taking decisions, and it's also not consistent. Because if you look at how they dealt with the issue of the former Secretary General of the ANC and how they are now dealing with the issue of the former president, you will think that these are two different organizations or different committees, while it's the same organization, same disciplinary committee, same leaders of the organization, but they are dealing with issues differently. And that is why I'm saying the ANC is not consistent. So it's very difficult for members to actually understand the Constitution and interpret the Constitution according to how the NEC is doing things in dealing with the issues of Section 25 of the Constitution of the ANC.
Okay. Let's quickly bring in Makone Maja into the conversation as well. Makone, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Your assessment of the argument of a potential flare-up of violence outside Luthuli House, and again, this is something that we've once seen before. Back in the days, there was a Jacob Zuma versus Cyril Ramaphosa, and I remember at the time MK members, the MK Veteran Association of the ANC, coming out to say that they will be protecting Luthuli House against the people who were anti-Jacob Zuma at the time. Do you agree with the party, though, that there could have been a potential of violence playing out on Tuesday?
Thank you again, Aldrin, for the invitation. I think that what we have to go on in terms of issues of perceived violence in the event of disciplinary action being taken against Jacob Zuma, some of the standoff we've seen during the campaigning of both the ANC and the MK party in this containing of elections. And so those are the sort of events that we have to go off in terms of whether there is a possibility that in Mr. Zuma's ability to mobilize supporters outside of Luthuli House, there could be a possible standoff between those supporters of the MK party as well as the ANC members themselves. But I think you and Dr. Mbandlwa also speak to a very crucial element that the ANC must be weighing in its interests going into this disciplinary action, and it deciding to renege on its plan to continue and to proceed, which is that of rule of law, right? You raised the issue of how decisive they were in terms of the Ace Magashule case and how they've seemed to be in and out as it relates to, you could argue, even a more grievous conduct being displayed by the former President Zuma. And you have to wonder, are these rules and regulations of these ANC in terms of rule of law and how inconsistently they are applied, are they rules that are applied equitably across all members of the ANC leadership and ANC constituency, or are they just mere suggestions, right? Because that's essentially what happens when rules are applied inconsistently, is that they are reduced from being rules to being suggestions, exemptions, and privileges afforded to people depending on their status within that very party. And so I think the ANC are weighing up interests. Certainly, violence would be one because of just the events that we've seen in the campaign trail and some of the standoff, particularly in the province of KZN between the MK party, members of the NK party, as well as members of the ANC, but also the issue of rule of law. And I also want to add that the issue of violence also speaks to law and order, because we know the ability of infighting in the ANC, which of course Mr. Zuma is still a member of. We know the ability of infighting, but within the ANC's ability to become and easily rapidly snowball into a matter of national interest, national security as well.
Yeah, and some people have said that the former president still have some people that support him that are still members of the ANC. But here's the point, though, Makone, as well, is that I know sometimes we say that we are all equal before the law. Well, is that really the case? In the case of former President Jacob Zuma, just going to quickly cite the papers now. This is now in relation to the IEC's application at the Constitutional Court. This is what the former president says in his papers, that Mr. Zuma was sent to jail in the eyes of the public with tragic consequences for hundreds of citizens who perished in the unfortunate and totally unnecessary event known as the July 2021 unrest. Mr. Zuma has previously expressed his condolences and regrets for the lives lost. He wishes to repeat those words without any qualification. That event sadly produced the largest number of deaths compared to any previous unrest or massacre. Rightly or wrongly, that tragic event will always be associated with the view held by some that his incarceration was reminiscent of the dreaded detention without trial, which formed part of our ugly past. So here what we see as well is that the former president and his legal counsel are making reference to the July unrest and directly linking it to the decision that was taken by the Constitutional Court that he was in contempt of court and that he must be sentenced to 15 months imprisonment. So some people may say that, yes, there are some people who have also been found guilty by a court of law, which they don't agree with. But in the case of Jacob Zuma, it also leads to violence.
Sure, that is certainly true. I think, Aldrin, you also remember that those were similar sentiments expressed by people who made submissions to the expert panel that was assembled by the President Cyril Ramaphosa into the violent events that took place during the July riots. And a lot of the testimony there expressed exactly what you're saying, which is that people found or held and believed that the arrest and sentencing of Mr. Zuma was unjust, and that is why there were a lot of mobilizing and incitement of violence, which resulted in arguably the deadliest political event, certainly in the democratic South Africa, but also deadlier than prominent events such as the Sharpeville massacre. I think the Constitutional Court certainly has a big matter on its hands in terms of adjudicating over whether it is qualified to hear and adjudicate over the matter with regards to the IEC's case against Jacob Zuma, whether there is indeed a conflict there that arises, although we already have a bit of precedent on the matter in terms of the Hlopev versus the Freedom Under the Law case, in which the same questions arose as to whether the Constitutional Court bench of justices should recuse themselves and in their recusal would result in them not being able to form a quorum, or whether they should proceed in the interests of justice because matters cannot be left pending indefinitely. So we've definitely already seen how cases being brought against the president have resulted in violence. And I'm sure that is certainly one of the things that will be weighed up leading up to the case against the IEC.
Yeah, Dr. Mbandlwa, and that's the other thing, right, is that the former president's counsel wants the 6 justices, including the Chief Justice, Zondo, to recuse himself or recuse themselves from this matter because they were directly involved in that decision that led to the judgment that was handed down that he be in prison for 15 months. Your read into that?
Well, if you look at the sequence of events, you will believe that there is a long history between the former president and the Chief Justice. And even though he mentioned that 5 judges must recuse themselves, but I think the main target is the Chief Justice, being him who actually played a major role in a number of events, and also who played a significant role in him going to prison. So I think there are so many things that actually that contribute in the former president saying that the Chief Justice and the 5 judges and the other 4 judges must recuse themselves. But also, when we talk about the system, the justice system, the laws and the constitutions, I also wanted to say something earlier on about how the ANC is interpreting its own resolutions, its own constitution. Just to recap to what is currently happening now at the ANC at a national level. You remember, Adrian, that the ANC introduced a step-aside resolution, and that resolution was not implemented uniformly across. So that is why I'm not surprised how they are dealing with the issue of the former president vis-a-vis how they dealt with the issue of the former Secretary General of the ANC. And even in the future, you will expect something completely different in the manner in which they deal with issues of those who are misbehaving in the ANC or who are doing wrong things in the ANC.
Yeah. Makone, let's come back to you on the Constitutional Court case again and the request for the 5 justices. This is now barring Chief Justice Zondo to recuse themselves. There's another matter before the Constitutional Court, and that is in relation to, also, by the way, linked to former President Jacob Zuma. But it is the erstwhile president of the Western Cape High Court Division. And in that matter that he is brought before the court as well, the court has actually now asked them to give an opinion on their take on the recusal of some of the justices. And just the difficulty, once again, that the Constitutional Court finds itself in, because the matter of Hlophe is also related to Jacob Zuma, when he is accused of asking the then justices of the Constitutional Court, or saying to them, "Sesithembele kunini," which now led to him being losing his job as the president of the Western Cape High Court Division, and eventually that decision was taken by the National Assembly.
So from what I can tell, there are 2 positions of the Constitutional Court on similar issues of recusal of certain justices that result in the Concord bench not forming a quorum. One is the issue of substantial justice. So they've asked the question of whether in not recusing certain justices, substantial justice would be delivered or being brought upon the person in question. And in that issue of substantial justice, they've been weighing 2 factors. One is with being procedural grounds, so this would be waived, or whether it's in terms of substantive grounds. I think with this case of Mr. Zuma, it could be that
Okay, Makone, we're going to try and see if we can get back to you. Unfortunately, the line is failing us. Let's see if we can try and get Makone back on the line. Our risk analyst and campaign manager there on the matter before the Constitutional Court. Let's try again. Makone, you were still explaining the matter that is before the Constitutional Court and also the issue in relation to recusal.
Okay, sorry about that. Just let me know if my line is better. So I was discussing the 2 elements that the Court would be weighing up, which relate to substantive ground as well as procedural grounds in establishing whether substantial injustice would be committed against the person in question in terms of whom the Court justices would be adjudicating should the leave of appeal be refused, should the application for judges to recuse themselves be refused. And I was also making the assessment that it could easily be seen that both procedural and substantive grounds overlap in terms of asking the question of whether somebody with a criminal record should stand in an election, whether their name should appear on the ballots, because of course it relates to rules and regulations about such individuals who have criminal records and whether they should be allowed to be on the ballot. But also on substantive grounds, you could argue that matters of election integrity are being brought into question. One of the other issues that was weighed in that Judge Hlophe case was similarly the application of certain justices to recuse themselves that would result in the Constitutional Court not being able to co-rate, and whether acting judges can be appointed in terms of Section 175 of the Constitution. And there the Constitutional Court held that where acting judges are being appointed to fill vacancies with respect to recusals, that cannot be allowed to occur. And so both the issue of acting judges filling vacancies has been determined by the Constitutional Court to be the exception to whether acting judges can be appointed, but also that matters cannot be left pending indefinitely. And so the Constitutional Court in that specific case proceeded with allowing members of its justices to adjudicate over the issue in spite of that conflict. And they in fact added that it was not the merits of the question that was so much in question, but specifically the issue of leaving matters pending well into perpetuity. And I think you could certainly make that case about the Mr. Zuma's case with respect to the election, that specific matter cannot in and of itself be left pending without any idea of the outcome, be left pending indefinitely.